Hey, how's it going? This is week 9 of me watching and discussing every fall 2023 anime. In this video I will be talking about every episode released between November 20th and November 26th. Winter has come here in Sweden and these magical snowy landscapes have started to appear again. I'm really quite fond of these sights. Sitting inside with a warm cup of tea, while watching a good show or playing a good game, while being able to look outside at this cozy climate is really special to me. Actually being outside, however, is basically the death of me. I don't deal well with the cold, so I'm gonna go back inside now. Vi hoppas att det funkar. Anyway, I once again had a total of 11 episodes to watch this week. Some crazy things are starting to happen in a few of these shows, and I'm sure things are only going to continue to escalate in the coming weeks. But yeah, let's get to it. Undead Unluck Episode 8. Things are really starting to go off the rails in this show, but I'm not convinced that it's in a good direction. I was primarily sold on this show due to the wonderful dynamic between our two main characters, but this facet of the series seems to be given less and less attention as the show goes on. Instead, the focus now seems to land on action scenes and plot developments more so than character interactions, and this ends up alienating me as a viewer somewhat. I personally think the show has a lot of really cool and unique things going for it, but they aren't put to good use in most of these battle scenes in my opinion. Most especially, this transition to the new personality of our main dude just felt like a total miss to me. He went from a unique, distinct and very likable character to just any other generic action guy. It seems like a lot of people really like the idea of absurdly overpowered or strong characters, but I've never really been among them. Seeing someone just trample all over everyone else but while having no personality isn't really something that I find compelling, so all of this is just getting in the way of what I consider to be this show's biggest strengths. Much of the dialogue also felt comparatively weak in this episode, but there were still a few small pieces here and there of what I like the most about this series. I still think this show is a decent to good time, but I personally hope we eventually go back to the dynamic we had at the start at some point. 16-bit Sensation Another Layer Episode 8. If I were to summarize my impressions of this 8th episode in a single phrase, I'd probably say, what the fuck? This episode almost felt like a completely different show, and there wasn't any slow or gradual transition or anything either, it just did a complete 180 flip of sorts. Aside from the time travel element, there hasn't really been much of a supernatural presence in this series. Things have been portrayed and function in the way you would generally expect. People behave in a manner that feels natural and reminiscent of the real world. But in this episode we might as well be on a different planet. Suddenly we're in a vague psychological fever dream. People behave like robots, people can merge with each other, and use devices that can measure the energy of video games by submerging their physical cartridges in some fluid. Buildings change shape and size on a whim, and certain bits of dialogue are directed as if we're in the climax to some supernatural drama. It's like I'm watching that one scene from the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. To be fair, we have had a slight glimpse into this confusion already in the 3rd episode of 16-bit Sensation, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it back then. I did think that this strong change of tone was rather interesting in a lot of ways, but there were also a fair few things that didn't really connect with me here. The whole idea that a character might act like an emotionless robot is something that often rubs me the wrong way, as this is a difficult thing to pull off in a tasteful manner. This wasn't all too bad in this episode, but it was still a jarring change, as just about every other character has felt very natural and believable. But maybe these two aren't even human, anything could be the case as far as these two goes. Anyway, we still got a lot of really cool and authentic insight into some old production methods here, which is something that I always appreciate. Illustrating using just a keyboard seems like something that would demand an insane amount of skill and understanding. Also, for some reason, in this cut where Mamoru is looking around in a PC store, there's a 6th gen Intel Core i5 CPU box on this shelf. In 1985. This is most likely the box for an i5 6600K, which is a CPU released in 2015. Okay then. I wonder if the structure and tone of this episode was meant to be some form of homage to old visual novels with similar themes. I know that Maeda, Jun and Ki seem to be very fond of this particular style of supernatural settings, but maybe I'm reading too far into it. The design of this new guy honestly looks like something straight out of a Ki production. Either way though, certainly a bold and interesting episode. A part of me really appreciates the decision to turn things in such an unexpected direction, but at the same time I was already quite sold on the tone we had going. This changes the entire setting of the show in a lot of ways, but I guess I'll just wait and see how they develop upon this in future episodes. What a wild ride. Dr. Stone, New World Part 2, Episode 7. Similarly to that standoff from a few episodes ago, this show has once again written itself into an interesting scenario, only to change its mind and undo it when the time comes for this to actually materialize. An incredibly significant development was made at the end of the last episode, as the petrification weapon had been taken away from Ibara and fallen into the hands of our protagonists. But instead of swimming away, maybe towards his allies or at the very least away from the immediate danger, this goofball just hangs around and allows the weapon to be taken away from him again. I realize this guy is meant to be dumb, but this is pushing it into unreasonable levels. I guess the show just really wanted to end the last episode on a dramatic note without actually having to follow through with it. To me, this just feels cheap and absurd, especially given how poorly thought out and contrived this reversal was. We also get some flashback to where Sousou gets taken off the island, and this scene is also plenty confusing. This lady, who I assume is Sousou's mother, is taking him away when she sees that Ibara petrified the old master guy. And in response to this, Ibara screams that she is abducting Sousou, which then prompts the soldiers to attack and fatally injure her. But I mean, what? In what sense is he being abducted if it is by his own mother or caretaker? Huh? Anyway, Ibara manages to get these two to run to the middle of the island and have the whole place be covered by the petrification. Somehow this one dude managed to outrun and overpower everyone in his path, but sure I guess. Our gang come up with some manner of plan that allows Senku to escape this petrification, and I'm curious to see how this will be explained. This is one scenario where I'm confident that there is a cool big brain solution thought out. This whole situation where it's now basically a 1 versus 1 between Senku and Ibara is honestly really cool, and I'm stoked to see how this plays out. But the road here has certainly been a bit rocky, I'd say. Under Ninja, Episode 8. Yo, it's this funny girl again. And she's once again being stalked by our main dude for some reason. I do wonder what's up with that. Is he just really into her or some shit? I mean, I guess that would be fair enough. Anyway, he eventually reveals himself in the most casual manner possible given the circumstances. Is she disappointed that he's just leaving? Uh-oh. Certainly asking the relevant questions. Anyway, it looks like some bad shit is going down at this school soon. Much of the episode is spent building up towards whatever is going down there in the next episode, I guess. Again, I'm not really keeping up with what's going on, I'm just here for the weird vibes. A bunch of time is also spent on this writer dude, and this wasn't really all that interesting. He ain't got the same kind of charisma as our main guy, nor is he a cute girl. Terrible all around. But yeah, looks like something dramatic is happening in the next episode. I just hope I'll get to see more of this funny lady. Keikensumi na kimi to keikensero na ore ga otsukiai suru hanashi, or Kimizero, Episode 8. This episode was also completely devoid of any of that cringe love triangle drama, but instead it found completely new ways to fumble instead. I've mentioned previously that I'd be more than happy to just get to see our two main characters do stuff for the entire duration of this series, but this episode might be proving me wrong on that front. Many of their interactions in this episode felt incredibly unnatural and awkward, and especially this segment where they do this survival game thing as a group was a total mess. The dialogue in this series has never really been all that noteworthy or impressive, but at the very least it for the most part hasn't made me groan in agony. But that wasn't so much the case here, as the cast now behave like flat NPCs that spit out a bunch of vapid fluff that feels absurdly unnatural and cringe. The animation also really struggles to keep up in these action scenes, if you can call them that, but that is fine, I can overlook that. But the fact that the characters all feel like bad actors in an amateur film is less easy to ignore. Main guy later runs into Kuros at his cram school and for some reason sees this as a reason to bail out of there. I'm not really understanding what's up with this. What's the problem if you're simply in the same room? It doesn't mean you have to talk or even look at each other. Why would Runa have a problem with this? The fuck, man? And Runa is continuing to pursue her big friendship project thing with Kurose, which is still an incredibly silly way to go about all of this. But hey, whatever. Maybe this show will become more fun again later? Either way, I'm stuck here now. Sousou no Frieren, Episode 12. Alright, I knew Frieren liked sleeping, but here she seems downright narcoleptic. Imagine just falling asleep while in the middle of a walk. Poor Stark got brutally rejected too. He just wanted to carry Frieren for a bit. I feel your pain, man. There are some absurdly cute expressions from Frieren here while we get some more backstory for her old crew. Wonderfully vibrant and endearing. It's funny how even this 1000-year-old elf has the capacity to act like a spoiled kid at times. I really appreciate when people or characters can actually hold on to some of their youthful whims even in older age. I at the very least hope that I never completely lose touch with those magical feelings of just being an innocent kid, even when I'm an old goober. Holy crap, what is this cute thing? Apparently it's the village chief. Okay then. The reveal that Himmel failed to pull out this legendary hero sword was a very welcome one in my opinion. Rather than painting up a scenario where this party is just fated to carry out this task, instead they're just a group of normal people who happen to have the determination and perhaps the luck to carry it out successfully. In my opinion, this creates much more compelling characters. For people to achieve great accomplishments simply on account of their spawn or via buffs from the plot is something that isn't easily attributed to the strength of the characters themselves. This can be presented in a good way too, but more often than not, this ends up being a cheap crutch. Something that a story falls back on when a more thoughtful execution is not made. But rather, when someone who indeed is not blessed with any such advantages still makes the choice to expend the manual effort to achieve results anyway, this is something that directly ties into their character. To be sure, this is also a pretty common theme these days, and this can also be presented in a very tasteless manner, but in the case of Himmel, I thought it was done in a wonderfully humble way. This whole thing reminded me a bit of that arc from Nisa Monogatari, where Kaiki speaks of the value of a fake in contrast with the real thing, and how the difference doesn't really matter. Or rather, how the fake can sometimes even be of higher value, because the fake has to make more of an effort to achieve the same results as the real deal. It's an interesting dilemma, and while I wouldn't say it was touched upon in as deep of a manner here in Frieren, it was still a cool thing to be shown. Anyway, Frieren and the gang clear out some monsters, and this cute lady chief is Maji Kansha. That's quite the choice of words, I actually love it.
Maji Kansha.
This cut of Frieren jumping out of bed is way more lively and animated than it needs to be. It really is wild how they're going out of their way to add this kind of flair even in scenes where it isn't really needed. But this is one of those things that really elevates these episodes and keeps things expressive and interesting. Also, this face from Frieren is absolutely absurd. Is Madhouse actually just memeing right now? Was this in the manga? What is going on, bro? Anyway, Frieren completely ruins Stark's birthday and storms off. What a grump. Frieren had such a thoughtful gift planned out and everything. This brief cut of Frieren carrying these plates felt way too fitting for some reason. Maybe she would make a good character in a cooking show in a different universe. This episode was fun. I'm really enjoying these more chill moments where we just get to see our characters hang out and have a good time. The snowy themes in the show feel particularly fitting too, as winter is starting to take hold quite strongly over here in Sweden now. Sitting inside and watching this show while the outside is all snowy and magical is quite the lovely thing. I'm looking forward to more of this cozy shit. Hikikomari, Kyuuketsuki no Monmon, Episode 8. Alright, so now we're in some weird limbo dream world thing. Am I watching Higurashi right now? It seems like we're back to this streak of edgy drama again. This wasn't quite as obnoxious as that fight with the last villain lady, but the dialogue here is still pretty awful. We get a big song and dance about how Sakana wants a big sister because her family was killed or whatever, and so she was going to mess with Terakomari's memories to make Terakomari her new sister or some shit. But Terakomari obviously says she can be her sister anyway, and for some reason this turns into some big moment. Afterwards, this absolute dork of a villain shows up and he's just a completely one-dimensional asshole that is meant to make the viewer dislike him. How creative. Anyway, Terakomari drinks some blood again and goes all edgy mode, but she still insists on making threats and getting an apology out of this dude instead of just killing him, which allows him to escape. What a genius. But he does get killed eventually anyway and everything works out, and then the episode slowly ends. I really have a hard time with how the dialogue is written in these more dramatic scenes, and going by the end of this episode it seems like more edgy drama is on the way. Shit. There were a few cute Terakomari expressions in this episode though, so I guess I'll just try to cling on to whatever small positives I can find. Spy Family, Season 2, Episode 8. Well, shit. This was certainly quite the episode. I'm sure this crazy fight scene is going to become quite the focal point for reaction videos and compilations where people will want to see others scream and gush over how over the top this all is. Yoru is so cool and badass, right? Her having conflicted convictions is so deep and meaningful, yeah? The amount of work that has been poured into the production aspect of this episode is certainly commendable, but to me that effort is completely wasted. Obviously, we all have different preferences, and mine clearly don't align with the creative vision for this series. I find Yoru to be an excessively obnoxious character, and this fight scene is an excellent demonstration of why that is. These exaggerated and edgy expressions mixed in with her goofy and carefree attitude towards the act of killing is to me an incredibly effective recipe for an unlikable person. She draws too much attention to her tasteless expressions, which to me clashes with what the show is likely actually trying to communicate. If she is indeed a professional killer who does this for the sake of justice, then she would just get the job done. She wouldn't crack jokes and she wouldn't make faces like this where she looks like she's fucking constipated. This balance between edgy expressions and light-hearted comments is a really strange one to me, as I feel that they directly conflict with each other. They're both opposite extremes that both go far enough into each direction to become frustrating. I'm sure some people will think it's super funny to see this lady complain about having jammed her finger after just having killed several dozen people, but that sure ain't me. And in the same way, I'm sure plenty of people will absolutely swoon over these ugly expressions because their excessive nature makes them stand out in a very obvious way. The animation certainly is impressive, and the overall cinematography and how this was directed was also quite on point, but Yoru completely ruins it for me. Everything just ends up being way too overt, and it thus ends up feeling utterly tasteless. A sad story will quickly go from being sad to being embarrassing if it is too obvious that it is intentionally trying to tug at your heartstrings using every cheap trick available at the author's disposal. And in that same way, these dramatic action moments lose much of their value when the show itself draws so much attention to them by having these ridiculous expressions and menacing eyes and threatening remarks that lead fucking nowhere. If you're going to kill each other, then just get on with it. There's no damn need to blabber on and spew out schoolyard level threats. There's so many moments where people just stand around doing nothing just so some character can finish their internal monologue or whatever too. Super kind of them all to wait for each other. And this whole dilemma Yoru is having about wanting to be with her family or not wanting to be with her family or whatever seems to be going nowhere. I'd be impressed if the show would actually have the guts to meaningfully develop upon this dynamic and maybe have Yoru actually step away from being an assassin, but I seriously doubt anything of the sort is going to happen because it alters the overall premise of the series. Which is totally fine because that premise isn't important anyway, but to the production staff I'm sure it is indeed very important. Anyway, it's going to be annoying for me to see this episode be talked up as some damn masterpiece in the coming weeks, but I guess I've been here many times before. That's just how it goes when you're too deep down this anime hole. God damn it, man. Also, fuck this post-credit scene, this is garbage. Kusuriya no Hitorigoto EP8. It is actually unreasonable how beautiful this show is visually. These wonderful expressions just keep coming, and Mao Mao continued to show new facets of her range of emotions both visually and in terms of her voice acting. This poisoned couple situation was a really strong way to start this episode, and it was lovely to see things get such a running start. It was really cool to get to see Mao Mao do her thing in a new environment, and the fact that her dad was along for the ride was a huge plus. In general, getting so much more insight into her background and upbringing was incredibly gratifying, and it did a lot to make me better understand why and how she rationalizes things in the way she does. I also really appreciated the fact that she didn't get everything completely right and had to be slightly corrected by her dad to grasp the full picture. The fact that the series acknowledges that one is never truly fully learned is great, and the way Mao Mao approached this shortcoming was in the most constructive and rational way I could picture. This is how it's done. You make mistakes and you learn from them. This episode features a pretty wide range of emotional expressions, some which are of a fairly violent and hateful nature. Expressions like these aren't always easy to get right, as they need to straddle a fairly fine line between aggressive and edgy. Go too far and they'll stop being intimidating and instead become silly or obnoxious. This show strikes an excellent balance in this regard, unlike certain others from this season. Anyway, once Mao Mao gets back to the palace, she is confronted by Jinchi, who is obviously very sad about her leaving with someone else. Here we get an absurdly effective bit of comedy as Mao Mao sows this ridiculous misunderstanding, but in a way that somehow feels incredibly natural and believable. In a lesser show, the setup for this joke would feel incredibly forced, but here it all actually lands in the best kind of way. Jinchi then goes into a total frozen daze, wearing this fantastic expression, and stays like this even as Mao Mao cleans up his dropped cup and leaves the room. One would think this would maybe get old after being shown for a while, but you would be dead wrong. If anything, it just became more funny the longer it went on for. Yuki Aoi is once again just knocking it out of the park with her performance here too. Brilliant episode. This series is really shaping up to be something special. Bokura no Ameiro Protocol EP8. Hello? Oh shit, I think I fell asleep somewhere along the episode again. Seriously, some of these episodes only have maybe 3 or 4 minutes worth of substance that they then drag out to last for a full 24 minutes, and it results in a total disaster. This is another episode that focuses more on the characters than on the gaming stuff, and that's basically a full red alert meltdown. If you like groaning and sighing at your screen, then boy is this the show for you. I really struggle to picture someone actually writing out these dialogues, they're impressively devoid of any human touch. The only thing that even vaguely stood out for me in this episode was when this Gyaru-looking lady started trashing the main team's skills. Here we get some more video game lingo, which is always a bit of fun for me to observe. This doesn't land in a very authentic way or anything, but at least it's funny, alright? Her attitude and such was far more pleasant than anything the episode had thrown at me up until this point, but her design seems to be a bit overambitious for the animation team here because she looks incredibly off in a lot of shots. Yikes. Anyway, another trash episode. I sure can't wait to see what happens in the next one. MF Ghost Episode 9. Things seem to be more or less continuing along the same kind of vibe as we've had in the past few episodes. I do enjoy what we're getting here, but these episodes are really starting to blend together for me. Some manner of variation in the tone or dynamic would be quite welcome at this point. I did appreciate getting to see this dude nerd out about the main girl some more, and the way he overshot this turn was pretty impactful. Getting this kiss really means the damn world to this dude. This scene where Kanata maintains his lead even on this long straight section was also pretty dope, and the music here once again just utterly slaps. Anyway, it looks like Kanata ultimately ended up finishing in 9th place. That actually seems quite reasonable and believable. I did wonder for a while if the show was going to pull something crazy and have him finish at first somehow, or at least closer to first, but I appreciate that he ended up in such a realistic position given his circumstances with his car. I got quite the wake up here when this lady walks up to Kanata and mentions how they met at that restaurant earlier this morning. I've completely lost track of how much time has passed. To me, it feels like that meeting at the restaurant happened in the Middle Ages, it's been so long ago. But hey, the race is now officially over. It looks like we might be getting that shift in tone that I've been wanting for a long time now. I'm stoked to see where things go from here. And that is all for this week. We're getting closer to the end of many of these shows now, and some of them are starting to really pull out the big guns. Not all of them have been able to make these developments really land, however, and this puts extra emphasis on the shows that really do nail it. My list of favorites this season has once again grown a bit smaller, as I feel that there are 3 shows that really stand high above the rest at this point. These are 16-bit Sensation, Kusuriya no Hitorigoto and Sousou no Frieren. All of these have managed to hold on to their magic and even meaningfully build upon it and become even better as they have continued to air. Certain others have in my opinion lost a bit of their touch as the shows have gone on. And that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching my stuff, I hope you have a cool day and see you next week perhaps.